In this episode of the Wild Party podcast, I'm excited to introduce Suzy Borlito, the co-executive director and Green Business Program Director at Sustainable Works, a nonprofit dedicated to environmental education and sustainability. With over 2 decades of experience in helping businesses go green, Suzy has been a driving force behind numerous municipal green business certification programs in California, empowering companies to reduce their environmental impact while boosting their bottom line. We dive into Suzy's journey from her early interest in environmental studies to her pivotal role at Sustainable Works. Along the way, we discuss the evolution of sustainability practices, the importance of educating businesses and consumers, and how simple, everyday changes can have a significant impact on our planet. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the Wild Party podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Suzy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefanie. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to talk to you. So I'll just let the audience know, Suzy and I had a little pre-chat yesterday and we got on such a roll. I just had to be like, stop. This is so good. We need to save it for the podcast. And I'm finding that more and more when I find people like you in the sustainable sector, I get so excited. And we found out that we have a little business connection, which honestly led me on my sustainable journey. So we'll get into all of that. But first, Suzy, I just want to start out so the audience kind of gets a little bit more background on you. Tell us how you first got involved in the sustainable area.
I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and I went to University of Toronto. And to be honest, the first year I studied, the first year I entered university, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And then by the end of year one, I had to make a choice. And so I decided, I love the world, I love the planet, let's do geography. And so as I was drilling down geography, this is like back in the 90s, and I'm aging myself a little bit, but that's okay. So back in the 90s, University of Toronto, the first year they offered an environmental studies, resource management track to geography was the year I chose geography. And so as soon as I read, oh, environmental studies, resource management, making change, that really struck a chord with me. And so by second year of uni, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I started there. So I graduated. Took me a few years to graduate because I had to pay for my education. And I'm first generation Canadian. My parents emigrated here from Europe, and so being resourceful was always part of my life. Resources and taking care of the planet and composting even and having a garden. And so I landed in LA. Years later, I graduated eventually. 2001, I landed in Los Angeles. And upon awaiting for my green card to process, I wanted to volunteer. I hadn't really volunteered before, but I thought, well, people had told me volunteer with something you're passionate about. Well, this is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about the planet and the environment. So I ended up on the doorstep of the Center for Urban and Environmental Studies of Santa Monica College, because I lived in Venice. So someone directed me to the center. They're like, it's a hippie house. It's got a native garden. They do cool things there. And that was enough for me. So I literally took a bus from Venice to Santa Monica College. It took me back then about an hour because I'd take 2 buses. I remember so well. And I started volunteering for the center. So I'll talk a little bit about the center. It's the Sustainability Center of SMC. It's a renovated home that was turned into a green home. And so I knocked on the door, and Professor Bill Selby from Earth Sciences Department of SMC open the door. They had literally just opened the center. They wanted to make it like a resource center for students to meet, talk about, environmental things. Sustainable Works hosted environmental workshops for students back then. So it was the perfect place for me. So I volunteered for the college, and Professor Selby said, oh, and there's a really cool nonprofit here that they're starting up as well. Why don't you speak to them as well? I literally had an interview with Sustainable Works to volunteer. They hired me right away as a volunteer. And it really was just timing. My green card processed. They offered me a part-time position. And here I am 22 years later. I'm still here.
Well, congratulations to you. Like I said earlier, that you figured out this sustainable journey was where you needed to be so early on in your career and your life. So yesterday, I will share with you guys a story that I shared with Suzy because we were kind of like bonding, and I was like telling her, yeah, I kind of came to the sustainability thing much later in my life through a job that I had that we'll talk about. I said, but I'm a child of the 70s, and I remember driving down to the Jersey Shore and being in the station wagon and having garbage for whatever reason and being like, I guess it was I'm going to do this, and my mom's never going to hear this webcast, but my mom was basically like, just throw it out the window, whatever trash it was. And when I said that to you yesterday, Suzy, the look of horror on your face, you were kind of like, we didn't do that. So I don't know if that's a Canadian thing, but I'm telling you, in the 70s, like, you threw your garbage out the window of your cars, like you just didn't think about where it went. So, I'm sure there's many people out there shrieking now, but just be honest here. It's like we've come a long way as a society, which I am so happy to be on the journey. That and now, like, to meet someone like you that was like, oh no, I've known about this for a long time, that we need to be stewards of our planet and not destroy it. And thank God we have people like you in place to really make this happen. So, Sustainable Works is doing amazing work. I read all through your website, but we also had a little connection because, as I also had told you yesterday, I worked for a company in Culver City that was part of a sustainability program. And when I mentioned their name, Envoy Technologies, you were like, oh, yes, yes, I do know those. So honestly, they are the ones that really introduced me to the world of, sustainable business practices. And it was specifically
Cool.
through, the work that they were doing to become certified in Culver City that I became aware that, oh, there are these programs citywide to really help, move businesses through this, to help them, educate them and figure out what that means. So do you want to talk a little bit about like those programs that you work with the various local cities?
Absolutely. I love talking about this. So there's actually a statewide initiative for green business programs, and it was endorsed by Galvin Newsom. So the California Green, it's this entity called the California Green Business Network, and greenbusinessca.org. And so the how it started I'd say back in the 90s, really the Bay Area. We're gonna talk about the Bay Area here because the Bay Area really started these green business programs initiatives. And how it started in the 90s, the 90s is when we started introducing the Clean Water Act. And, and we had Earth Day already, but a lot of policies and the EPA was happening then. And so back in the 90s, businesses had to start getting into compliance with, from renovating their toilets to water efficient toilets and their faucets to like pollution prevention. So, restaurants had to, for example, restaurants, when they dispose of their used cooking oil, they need to dispose of it in a proper way so it doesn't, contaminate our water systems. And so businesses had to started following these laws. And so the Bay Area started these green business programs. Back then, it was really just being in compliance. Like, by being compliant, businesses would get recognized. So it started way back in the 90s. And then I'd say in the 2000s, the programs evolved into, well, get into compliance and let's start going a little bit beyond compliance. And so that started in the Bay Area. Thank you, Bay Area. And from there, the word started spreading around, even, SoCal, like in Santa Monica, LA, we started developing, even at Sustainable Works, in conjunction with the city of Santa Monica, we developed our first, a similar green business program back, we launched it in 2001. And so all the cities all around California, like ranging from the Bay Area to LA, Central Coast, like Santa Cruz, cities started kind of doing the same thing. And then after a few years of these programs, the cities started talking to each other because, businesses have different locations all over the state. And businesses started saying, well, hey, I'm doing this program in San Francisco, but the location in Santa Monica, we don't have to do the same things. It's, like what's going on here. And so the cities started talking to each other, and coordinators like me, Green Business Program coordinators, we started just loosely, I think through Yahoo groups or something, we started loosely communicating to sort of have our programs, to have the criteria, be on the same page so that different locations were following similar guidelines. And that really was the grassroots movement, coordinators like me talking and developing our programs and making our Microsoft Word edits. We started talking to be on similar to have similar criteria, and then it just started really really growing. So I think by 2010 there were maybe 30 cities in California that had these green business programs, and that's where really this network started happening. And shortly after, it became an official network and entity called the California Green Business Network. And that has evolved today. Today, greenbusinessca.org is essentially, it's a database. And it's a platform where where cities can easily develop and join the network. There's templates for cities ready to go with green business program criteria, which really depends on it. Really, the criteria depends on the sector. So for each different business sector, the criteria is different. What a restaurant has to do to be efficient. A restaurant uses way more resources than an office, for example. And that's how it all started. So today, happy to report that the California Green Business Network is now in about 50 jurisdictions statewide. Not just cities, it's city and county. So that's why I made by jurisdictions. Some programs are county, some programs are city, but we have over 50 cities now in California that have adopted these programs, which means the city funds the program, they pay for the platform, they pay for the staffing, and these programs are a free service to businesses located in that jurisdiction.
Yeah. And so that was my experience, like I said, when I worked for Envoy Technologies in Culver City, that I do remember our office manager at the time having this checklist and going around, and I'll just say it, I'm very nosy. I'm always like, what are you working on? And so he tells me, and I'm like, oh, that's really kind of cool that we're aware of that and we do things like that, because, a lot of times we'll have our own private practice at home of what we do that's we feel is environmentally, conscious. And then you go into the office and kind of all hell breaks loose. All of a sudden there's just, various like plastic garbage and things just, kind of don't really get utilized. They just get bought and just thrown away. And I'm really, very much like aware of waste at this point. Like I'm very aware of my own internal purchases, like private purchases. I hate to go and buy stuff just kind of on a whim. I'm like, do I have something at home that can fulfill this need? Once I really became aware of like, hey, there's these landfills and that stuff doesn't just disappear out your car window, Stefanie. And I was like, this is horrible. This is just stuff that never goes away. So let's talk about, so you said like there's different levels and programs for like, let's say different sectors. Since I came from like, an office sector, I just want to give our audience a little bit of an example what it means to be a green business. So like when I worked in an office, if you just want to tell us a little bit about what that involved, for this business, like an office to consider or certify as green, what does that look like?
Sure. So there are currently statewide, there are 3 levels of certification. I won't go into all of them right now, but we just introduced an entry level, and then there's a tier 2 certification. Entry level involves implementing anywhere from 15 to 22 measures. Okay, to give you an example, the tier 2 level, anywhere from 50 to 65 measures. And then tier 3 is the innovator level. And that's where we incorporate beyond just environmental stewardship, we incorporate social responsibility and equity. So tier 3 is like the highest level. So, but no matter what level a business wants to get certified at, we look at essentially 6 resource areas. Okay, so every business has to look at energy efficiency, water efficiency, pollution prevention, and that's using cleaning chemicals and pest management. Then there's waste, so waste diversion, of course, reducing, reusing, recycling. And then there's transportation. So how do employees commute to work, and what sort of, does the business have a fleet, for example? So I think I've mentioned 5. And the 6th one is community. And that's really important. The 6th one is, how does the business, how do they support their city, their community? And it can be, that involves anywhere from joining your local chamber, being involved with city initiatives, do you go to council meetings? And so we just want to make sure, if the business is doing, if they're implementing all of these measures, and they often really want to get recognized as well. So in order to get recognized within your city, you need to interact with your city and your local community. So I think I said all the 6 measures there: energy, waste, and it didn't mention water. So energy, waste, water, pollution prevention, community, and then transportation.
You guys make it really easy for businesses to get involved and fulfill these, various, let's say, checkpoints in order to get green certified. Like I said, I do remember, our office manager having this list and kind of taking around and doing all that. And, it's really funny because just by having a sign up, it makes people so much more aware of what they're doing, like recycle here, turn the water off, and you just become so much more conscious of your own personal behaviors. It's really effective, because sometimes you could look and be like, well, what does that really do in the end? But taking accountability for your personal behaviors really matters. And with that said, so I know you guys do a lot of community outreach as well through education and events and everything. What does that look like during a typical year? Do you have a schedule of events that happen for each? Like, is it just like a yearly thing, like Earth Day? Okay, we all do Earth Day. Or do you have like a schedule of events that then these companies would have the option to take part in? How does all of that work?
Yeah, so we do a lot of outreach, and you have to kind of hit and spread the word at various angles, because not all people go to events, not all people respond to emails, not all people like phone calls. And so we really do a mix of a bunch of things. It's attending networking events, really door-to-door outreach sometimes. We host our own events. So in a typical year, what that looks like is, I'd say our biggest, and we can't do any of this alone. So we do like to have partners and partnerships. I'd say our local chambers of commerces is the Chamber of Commerce in each of the cities I work with. They're a really good organization to work with. And so chamber networking events, just by attending, the chambers, they do the work of attracting chamber members and bringing the businesses together. So I'd say our local chamber is our biggest, one of our biggest assets. So we're regularly attending chamber mixers, chamber networking events, new member orientations. You meet other businesses that become chamber members. And so attending events like those are super key. And so, the chamber also, they have newsletters, and they end up recommending our program to businesses. So thank you, Chambers of Commerces. And I can't speak highly enough of, if you're a business, whether you're a new business or existing business, just get out there and network just by meeting people. And, I may not get a business lead at that meeting, but I've given out my, virtual business cards to a lot of people, and they do spread the word. So that is a key thing. And we also will host our own Green Business 101 webinars. We will host our own mixers. We're a very small group, by the way. We're a women-run firm. Right now, we're currently all women, except for one, our marketing contractor, who is a male, but he's a good guy. And so we host our own events, but our bandwidth is fairly small, and our budget is not huge. And so, but by hosting our own events, I'd say, we've been doing this for 22 years. So we have a pretty decent, an email list of businesses, those 1,000 businesses that I've worked with over the last, 2+ decades. So I'd say about like 5,000 our email list of businesses is 5,000. Residents, it's a lot bigger, but we do host our own. But I'd say the biggest bang for buck we get is attending chamber networking events, and then any events hosted by the city that specifically are geared towards businesses. We attend those as well. So we are always out there trying to spread the word and get businesses to register with us.
Yeah. And well, you're right in my all of my neighborhoods. I mean, I've worked in Culver City. I have family in Santa Monica. I live in West Hollywood, so you're all over where I am at. And
Ah,
I think that's really amazing and awesome to hear too, because I do know a lot of people around here really, are interested in figuring out like, well, how can I do more to become a green business? Like, what does that mean? So, insofar as like sustainable works itself, you guys are a nonprofit it's a nonprofit environmental group, is
yes,
it?
that's
Okay.
right.
So where does your funding come from for operation? Is that federal funding you're getting, state funding? Like how do you guys where do you get your operational funding in order to be able to do all of this great work?
So I'll just focus on our green business programs. It is entirely city funded. So
Mhm.
all the cities I've mentioned that we work with, uh, Glendale, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, Culver City, our funding specifically comes from those cities. I'd say the majority, let's say 80%. The remaining 20%, the California Green Business Network, and I'm giving them a huge plug because we've made so much more of an impact since having calculators, and we can input numbers, and then these robots behind the scenes calculate these savings, and it just the impact we just the impact is just we can generate these reports that really show the impact of what these simple programs do that are free to businesses. The remaining 20% of our funding, I'd say, comes from grants. California Green Business Network, they, up until this year, because I know that the state has had a little issue, the CAGBN, California Green Business Network, they get their funding from state sources, Cal EPA, a variety of places as well. But they were actually giving $30,000 grants to cities to start their own green business program. So that was like a seed grant. I don't believe they're available anymore, but I know a lot of cities took advantage of that. So some funding from the CAGBN, and then occasionally we may get little grants here and there, or the cities may get the grants, and then the cities pass on the funding to us. But we are by the majority funded by cities that we administer programs in.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned the whole calculator thing because you did send me over the report, which I loved reading and having quantifiable numbers like that really, really do make a difference. So I'm looking at it right now. So I'll just read from what you give me, like your greenhouse gas emissions saved, 10,000. What is it? No, yeah, 10. Is it that 10,000? No, 10 million, right?
I
Ten
think
million nine
so.
hundred eighty-one 846 pounds of CO2 total, savings of $18,000 equals the equivalent of planting 17,070 acres of urban trees. That's amazing. I really feel when people read stuff like that, like you said, that they start understanding, oh, this really does have an impact. And I know we used to do that at Envoy too. So what Envoy did is they would put electric car fleets in multi-family living situations
Mhm.
and office buildings. And one of the things we were always publicizing is like, okay, this is how much CO2, you have saved just by driving an electric car. And this is what it equals in trees. And I know our audience loved seeing the tree equation. Like that was what they were always asking for. Like, how many trees did we plant just by driving these cars? Like that's easy for people to understand. So quantifying it that way is just so brilliant.
Totally. And those numbers are, we started using the California Green Business Network calculators. We started in 2017. We've been doing this since 2001.
Mm.
So gosh, we have 16 years worth of data. I mean, I do have the Excel spreadsheets, but I just have not had the bandwidth to merge all the spreadsheets. But our impact has actually been so much more than that. That's just the data tracked from businesses we've worked with since 2017. So, where are we, like 7 or 8 years? But we've been working for 22.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're doing such amazing work. So I just feel like we need to spread the word more and more. And I see you are doing that with your student program, which I loved hearing about. It's so important to teach kids like early on what this means. Like I said, Child of the 70s. I didn't know. I didn't know. And now, they know. I mean, it's so important. As you are already aware, Alpha generation is all about this. Gen Z, all about this. They're just like, no, we're not here to trash the world. Like we want to figure out how to save it. So
Yeah,
tell me a
and
little bit about your
Stephanie,
student programs.
sure. And Stephanie, I do want to make you feel a little bit better that, back in the 70s, we didn't have recycling programs.
No.
I mean, Toronto. I mean, yay, Toronto, I think it was 1988 or 90. Like we didn't recycle until recently for various reasons that, we'll get into right now. But back then there was just this, it was just the trash bin. And if there was no trash bin around, yeah, I guess if you were in the US, you threw it out the window. In Canada, I think my mom maybe put it in my pocket and then I'd have to wait for a trash can.
Maybe.
Anyway, but our student program is really how sustainable work started. Our green business program came afterwards. So again, we were back in 1994. That's when the city of Santa Monica launched. They were actually one of the first cities. I believe they were the first city in the U.S. to create, develop, and launch a sustainable city plan. These days, you hear climate action adaptation plan, sustainability plan, like you hear various reiterations of it. But Santa Monica was the first city to create and launch this in '94, and they had an environmental task force. These days, they're called like commission meetings or commissioners, but back then it was just a task force, which was a group of volunteers that got together. And some of the volunteers in '94, some were from the city, some were residents, and a few of them were professors from the college. So the Sustainable City Plan, it was really it was an effort between the city, the college, and key stakeholders and residents. And so because the college was involved, of course, the college really wanted something for the students. And so I believe in 2000 we started doing residential workshops. We would just meet at people's homes. And, 22 years later, we still have those same 6 categories. It started off with energy efficiency, water, reducing waste, reducing chemicals, transportation, community. So those were the themes of the residential workshops that would meet in people's homes, sometimes at libraries, and and those were also the categories for our student sustainability workshops, which today we are still hosting at Santa Monica College. We've also offered them at various LACC colleges, recently West LA College. We've been in and out of the LA college system for a little while. And also I'll mention high schools. So today I believe we still offer them, or waiting for the grant funding to offer them at Venice and Santa Monica High School. And so that is really, and that's offered as an extra credit opportunity. It's not one of the college credential like classes you can get. It's an extra thing you can do, kind of like a club.
Mm-hmm.
And we partner with about 40 professors, and the professors, their choice, the professors that believe in sustainability, and you can really carry and implement sustainability with any career field you do. I mean, the cosmetology department, the fashion department, those professors partner with us to educate their students on these issues because sustainability doesn't matter with fashion and materials. Hell yeah, it matters with that sector. And so that's how we educate students. And it's been developed, of course. It's a work in progress every year because there's so many changes in the field. But that is a very impactful program we do to foster student and sustainability student leaders. And it's been very effective for students, and even some of them change their major and end up going into this field.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. So do you feel that there is more interest in the field of sustainability and what you're doing? Like, are you getting more students interested in this now because it seems to be a bigger conversation?
Well, I'd say looking at the student population, yes. It's a little difficult to answer because our student population, in-person student population at community colleges, really went down during COVID, of course. And I'd say our student population in person is not, it's not really near what it used to be. And so our that's one, one thing about our workshops is that the whole point of our workshops and our programs is we're not an online entity. We're not stay at home and make a difference staying at home. You can make some difference staying at home, but you really got to get out there and meet people and act. I think our byline for sustainable works is environmental education and action. And to do action, you need to get out of your home. And so I'd say our student population, our student enrollment has gone down because of COVID. And, we offer a lot more asynchronous and virtual classes now. But I will say when I started with Sustainable Works, and I would make calls and stuff back in 2001, 2002, I would say Sustainable Works, and they would say, who? I'd say, I'm calling from Sustainable Works. How do you spell that? I would have to spell the word sustainability time and time again. It wasn't a word, in the early 2000s. Like, people, what does that mean? And every presentation I did, I'd have to define what sustainability means, sustaining current resources in order to provide for future generations, like that's sustainability, or sustaining whatever resource or whatever, like human resources, a lot more, not just environmental resources, but all resources. And today, people know how to spell it. So, in the last 2 decades, we've come, we've come a long way. In some ways, I am still, in some ways, our measures, like we have some measures on our checklist that have not changed since 2001, reduce energy use, perform retrofits to make your business energy efficient. Like that, that's still the same language today. I mean, back then it was switching to fluorescents, 20 years ago. Today it's switching to LEDs, and going beyond that, just making use of your natural light, for example. So in a long-winded sort of way, yes, people are way more interested in this field. And it's very competitive, and I'd say it's a very different landscape today than to when I started 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the general consciousness of society has changed. Like, the conversations are different. People are more aware of it. We talk about it more. But in some ways, I feel like, we also, people don't really grasp the full concept, because you'll hear everybody like, oh, no plastic water bottles. You should have a reusable water bottle. And then you go home and everybody has 50, reusable bottles now. And you only need one, maybe two, but then there's another one that's trending on social media, and then everybody runs out and buys that. And we forget somewhere along the way that every single action has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
You bought a brand new reusable bottle. You already had 40 at home. There was a cost to that new bottle, and I think that conversation gets lost a little bit. And I was going to ask you what's kind of like your pet peeve with that. And I think you might share that a little with me. It's like, we all should be reusing stuff, but we don't need to make more. Like, I'm very big on even myself looking around my house, which I mentioned, and be like, what can I use instead of buying something that would serve the same purpose? I'm really at that point in my life where I'm like, I look around, I'm like, I don't need to buy one more thing. And I mean, I'm in my 50s, so I've had a lot of time to, accumulate. But I think that's part of the conversation we really need to maybe beef up, that to get people talking more about that. It's like, yes, we're all going to reuse stuff, but we don't have to buy as much. And I think you touched on that too with the energy conservation. I think that's really
Yes.
still a big point of, how do we stop using so much energy for stuff? Because it's all stuff.
Yes. And
I'm
so,
in
I mean,
West Hollywood, and they just approved this building development where they're going to have these lighted billboards, and it's like, that's just more energy produced for ads and marketing. Do we need to do that? And I think that conversation gets lost a lot. So
yeah. I mean, and this is like, you bring up a good point, and it's really a catch. It's a catch 22, and I find myself getting conflicted a lot when it comes to this. For example, a building. And I'll just stress that we work with existing buildings. We're not about knock down your wall, knock down your building, build a new one. We're not a green building program. It's a green business program. And we work with existing operations and within the existing walls. That's really what we do. If the business wants to install solar, we'll help. But yeah, I'm conflicted because a business, they have fluorescent lights and they want to become more efficient. So my answer to them is, okay, well, you have to get rid of these fluorescent lights. You have to get rid of them and, replace with LEDs, or, open the curtains, the blinds, and allow in natural light. So I do find myself conflicted, but I'll keep it on a personal level. Start off by buying used stuff. So I pretty much solely shop at thrift stores. That's what I do, because the stuff has already been, it has the footprint, but the footprint reduces, for the lifespan of the product. And so where you can, buy used stuff. And there's so many resources now. For 3 months, aside from underwear, try to, let's see if you can, I challenge you for 3 months to not buy any new articles of clothing. That does not mean you can't, get, you can add to your like garment closet, but you can, you can do it. Like I've done the challenge where for 3 months, okay, only if I need new underwear, I'll buy that new. I won't buy that used. It's really, really possible. And even with, kitchen utensils, pots and pans, like these, Goodwill is one of my favorites. They have some other issues. And I do want to also stress that all of the opinions I'm stating are my opinions and not the opinions of the cities that I'm contracting with. FYI, I do have to say that. And so just start with buying used stuff. There's also Warner Brothers. They have an exchange program from film sets. You can find desks and chairs and shelving and office products. There's, again, ton of resources for commercial and residents to not buy used stuff and reduce your footprint. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear about the Warner Brothers one. I didn't know about the one. I'll have to look that up since I'm in the Hollywood area. I'm sure there's probably some really interesting
They were
things there.
existing. I believe they're still around today. Google it and let me know, but I believe they are still in existence.
Yeah, I do love those marketplaces that are now online. There's a lot of I don't know the one that's around here that my neighbor always talks about. It's basically you post something online that somebody has left on the street. Like, because I'm in West Hollywood and I don't know what it is about my neighborhood, but people love to put their used items out on the curb.
Yes.
And then people come and take them. Like they do it because they know people will come and claim them. But it seems to be specifically around my area. It's almost like even walking my dog in the morning, there's so many various things I see. It's like, I have to tell you, I have a huge garden out front, and pretty much 80% of the pots that I got, the plant pots I've picked up off the street because people leave them out. And I love that. First of all, it's like, you never know what treasure you're going to find. And secondly, I'm just like, oh God, now I have another pot to put another plant in, which makes me super happy. So yeah, there's things like that out there that I think we could all easily do. And it's just, sometimes you just have to, I don't know, be more aware, open your eyes too. But the conversation as far as clothing, yes, I will tell you, I have been on an active campaign myself in the last year to not buy any more clothes. Like I said, I'm in my 50s. I have plenty of clothes. I have a home-based business. I don't really have to buy another outfit. My closet is stocked. And also, thank you to all the social media. Every style is now in. It's no longer like, oh my God, we need this one certain look. Everything's in. Everything.
Right. And you can
everything's
also rent.
trending. Everything's in fashion, which I love. So, I have a range of jeans of various styles. But it is hard. It's hard because we're in such a consumer society and we're always being pushed to buy the next thing.
Yes.
So that's something that I think we all deal with, figuring that whole thing out. But luckily, we do have people like you and Sustainable Works that are really bringing this conversation to the forefront and helping businesses specifically understand where their place in the whole ecosystem is with all of this. And that helps. Just the awareness. Like I said, I saw it at my last office that people were aware more and they're like, okay, we'll make these changes. So I like to always end my podcast my interviews with a personal question, and I like to end it on a high note. So for just you, it could be personal or it could be business, but
Mhm.
what's a win that you've had in the last 90 days that you would like to share? Something good that happened in business or personally that you're like, man, that happened and that's just really, awesome.
Oh gosh, one win.
One win.
So I was working with a local business, and here's something. This is actually something I see a pretty common occurrence. And so you know, the one of the biggest footprints we have as humans are the use of paper consumables, right? Like we need a lot of paper. Like printing, okay, printing paper, we're online, that's good. We can't wipe our butts virtually. So we still need to wipe butts with, toilet paper. A lot of people still use paper towels. I use a reusable option, but I'd say the biggest consumable, especially with restaurants and offices, is you're always going to see toilet paper, you're always going to see paper towels, and you will see paper napkins. And so a common, and and there's greenwashing. We know about greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you see a product that has a green leaf on it and it says green, buy me, that really means nothing. You have to do the legwork and you have to look at the item and think. And so, bamboo. So a lot of businesses end up buying bamboo paper products thinking it's a more sustainable option,
Right.
but it's in my mind and in terms of our guidelines with our green business program, bamboo is not the option. It is like a renewable source. It's not local. So pretty much all bamboo paper products are imported from Asia, from the East. Like it's got a long journey to get here. And then B, it's not a post. We want to reuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, right? And it's in that order: reduce, reuse, recycle. Bamboo is not, it's a virgin source. There's plenty of it, but it's not reusing something. And so our guidelines, we recommend switch from bamboo to recycled content paper products. So by and post consumer is the word. So if you buy a product that says recycled, that doesn't necessarily mean it's been a paper product that's been used, put in the recycle bin. A big goal and a big way businesses can make a difference is to support the recycling industry, which is struggling right now, by purchasing recycled products whenever you can. And we talked about there's reuse. You can buy, you can buy used office supplies, desks, chairs, all that stuff. If you don't want to buy used for whatever reason, you can buy products made from recycled materials or recycled paper. And so one recent win was just by explaining that, but like really succinctly, businesses get it. And they're like, oh my God, all this time I've been buying bamboo thinking it was better, but it's more of a footprint. And so, I mean, it seems like a small win, but when you're working with a business that has hundreds of employees and they're buying hundreds, thousands of, toilet paper rolls per month, per week, it does make a big difference. So that's one win. It's
I
kind of
love that
nerdy.
win because you actually just really educated me. I didn't know all that either.
Yeah, I mean,
And
if you
you
want to
just
buy,
educated her. That's a good win.
yeah, and that's for like disposable, right? Like if you want to
Yeah.
buy, I'm not knocking, bamboo, like fully, like for material, for clothing. I'm not knocking it there. I'm knocking it as not like a sustainable solution for disposable items. So
Right.
I'll just put that out there for people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good one. I like that one. And that made a lot of sense. And like I said, you just really educated me and probably most of our audience too, as far as what those words mean. So I'll just let you know, my business is marketing. I understand we are part of the problem in a lot of ways because we use terms and words in a way they shouldn't. So for all of my marketers out there, be a little bit more aware and ethical and understand that your words have impact because there is a lot of greenwashing that goes on. And in reality, we really do need as an entire planet to start being more mindful because when it's done, it's done. Like when it's out, when we run out of stuff or, there is no coming back,
Yeah,
might
natural
not happen in
resources.
our lifetime, Susie, but there's I have nieces and nephews to think about. So I'm very aware of that stuff. But I am so excited that you agreed to come on the podcast. So let me tell you how I found you first. So when I was doing my outreach looking for various businesses, I found that I just had a whole slew of people in the beauty industry, in the fashion industry, and food. And I'm like, yeah, but I really want to talk to somebody just in sustainability, in, working with programs in cities. And then I was literally doing Google searches and you guys popped up and I'm like, oh my God, that was exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it was really great because you kind of, really were covering all the bases that I really wanted to be able to, deliver to the Wild Party podcast audience that is listening now, that when we talk about things like sustainability, there are programs out there to support your business and to your communities and to students. And sometimes we do have to do the legwork, at least go on Google and do the search, like be the one to find the information. Don't wait for it to just fall into your lap. So I really wanted to be able to highlight the great work that you guys are doing and, give a little bit more energy, more sustainable and renewable energy to everything that's happening. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all of that. It's been really great talking to you.
Thank you so much. And can I make one closing plug?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if you're a business out there in California, and I believe the network is also evolved to other states in the US, but we're going to focus on California. So if you're a business and you're interested in what I'm talking about, all you need to do is visit greenbusinessca.org, and then you click on Get Certified or Get Started, enter your address, and if your city pops up in the drop-down menu, it means that your city is funding a green business program, and you can take advantage of these 3 free services. I'd say it's about a 2 to a 4 month process to do the whole thing. We, coordinators like me, work around your schedule. We have in West Hollywood and Glendale, we offer up to a $1,500 rebate. For a small to medium-sized business, it's a lot, just to help cover any costs, whether it's switching cleaners or pest management services or updating your HVAC or switching to LEDs. And so if you're interested, please take advantage of this really useful and free resource, and lower your footprint, and you can attract new customers like me to you.
And if they want to find out more just about Sustainable Works, what is your website again?
Sure. We're sustainableworks.org. And I'm sure all of you know how to spell sustainable. And we're sustainableworks with an S.org. We're a small but mighty firm. And Stefanie, I really appreciate you inviting me on your podcast today.
Well, thank you so much, Suzy. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I can't wait to just keep in touch with you and see what else is, down the road for all of this. Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.